At 6 o'clock on the morning of February 26, upon the instruction of Russian President Vladimir Putin, the ground shook in the middle of Europe. Quickly returning to those days, the vast majority of analysts are almost certain of Russia's victory. There were even those who said that Russia would wipe Ukraine off the map. Actually, this scenario was pretty close to reality. At this time, Russia was the world's second largest power in terms of troops, with 1 million active and more than 2 million reserve personnel. We're talking about an army that spends more than $50 billion a year. Another detail is the presence of Vladimir Putin, who is far from backing down from the war. Anyway, the war has begun. Those who said that after 72 hours Russia would destroy Ukraine were greatly disappointed. The Russian army advanced rapidly, but things soon turned upside down. We started to see a lot during this period. Troops that cannot communicate with the front, soldiers waiting alone with 3 or 5 people at certain points, vehicles that run out of fuel, abandoned tanks that do not know where to go. So what happened? During the war, Ukraine acted with a large wave of aid from both European countries and the United States. Troops, weapons, vehicles, and more importantly, even the Ukrainian army, which is constantly trained and equipped, has since 2014 reached the point where Ukrainian troops are deployed right next to Luhansk and Donetsk, which are now in Russian hands. Let's turn the calendar pages with click fast. On October 6, the Ukrainian army was deployed to the city of Balkaria, which the Russian army had held for more than 6 months. In just 2 days, the Ukrainian army took it back, as Russia barely captured it with great losses. Look, maybe I'm summing up the process in 2 sentences. But this is clearly a real turning point, both militarily and psychologically. Moreover, this step is the first step in the beginning of a brand new and powerful for the Ukrainian army, Ukrainian forces since then. It has officially begun to sweep the Russians out of these lands, and this is quite surprising. Here I want to take a quick look at some numerical data. 8,000 square kilometers of Russian territory and dozens of different towns have been officially taken back by Ukraine. In other words, imagine battlefield from a bird's eye map. Imagine this area changing from color to color pretty quickly. These are moments that graphically look pretty fun. I think we would not be wrong if we say that it was very dramatic for Russia and of course Vladimir Putin. We are slowly getting to the main point. We are now ready to talk about how Ukraine changed the war. In cities with the most violent conflicts, Kiev, Kharkiv, Mariupol, previously unarmed and powerless Ukraine, tried new and different methods of resistance. Everything was coming to the same point. We need support or we will fall. After the expected support arrived, well-planned defensive and then offensive plans were put into practice. After the operations against Russia, the lands were largely cleared of Russians. Russia began to rely on artillery rather than defense. But there was a truth that everything really fed. So Russia has really weakened. The number of dead or wounded Russian soldiers exceeding 80,000, according to the estimates of the US government, marked the beginning of a serious disaster in the army. Also, I would like to say the main critical detail here. Almost all casualties and serious injuries always came from the most competent and powerful units. At this point, we need to take a look at the intelligence supported by Ukraine. Since the beginning of the war, many powerful intelligence agencies, especially the CEA, have provided serious technology assistance to Ukraine. Every image recorded instantly of the region is shared with the center. The advance of the Russian army could be followed almost without delay. In addition, many reporters continue to gather information for Ukraine in the region and to identify areas of action for the Russians. In other words, as soon as Russia decided on the step to be taken, Ukraine knew all the details of this step. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is the most desirable thing for a warring country. At this point, it was very important that the upper echelon of the Ukrainian army correctly analyzed every incoming intelligence and started to accelerate. Anyway, let's continue. We have just mentioned that the Russian army has lost its good soldiers. Of course, this process, which the Kremlin described as a military operation, but later turned into a partial mobilization, had similar ones in the field. For a long time, the Russians avoided collecting as much manpower as they wanted for the war, which they called military action. It meant a decision to bring more mercenaries and even prisoners to the front. In the future, the age limit was also removed. By this point, the army of over 40 had literally fallen into the hands of the wolves with little training. The Ukrainian army, which continues to be trained by Western senior soldiers, is getting stronger day by day as Russia weakens militarily. It even became so powerful that the top soldiers in the army identified Kherson as the key to controlling the south. Most of his soldiers took up positions to shoot down enemy soldiers at a single point close to the city. The northeastern part of the area was officially evacuated after Russian troops were forced into battle. This was an incredible advantage for Ukraine, which meant progress. Large numbers of Russian soldiers fled the path of the Ukrainian army, leaving behind trucks, tanks and artillery. Almost every point where the Russians retreated one by one was captured by Ukrainian soldiers. Among these was the supply depot Izium, an important railway center. In other words, we can say that they have officially found gold for both troop transfer and financial needs. After what we have told throughout the content, I think the latest situation in the war has become clear to you. I guess you don't need to know much to say that the next move is about Crimea. I think every ending considered key here is undone. It turned into a serious source of morale for both the region and the citizens. What will Putin's winter plans bring? While we can't see Ukraine moving to the winning side at the moment, it's interesting in many ways. On the evening of the day I plan every moment of it, I would like to finish our intention with a very clear classic, that is, a concise word and Russian proverb. I wish I hadn't made this plan, it's the biggest defeat.